Hello and welcome to Business Today. I'm Siddharth Zarabi, and with me here at the Davos World Economic Forum, Jayadev Galla, the co-founder and chairman of the Amara Raja Group, and someone who's also in politics as a member of parliament. Welcome to Business Today. It's always fascinating to have someone from industry with a deep understanding of politics as well. So the first question really from that point of view, now that we are here at Davos at the World Economic Forum, first large global gathering in person after the pandemic. What's the central theme that you are picking up, especially with reference to India?
See, I think one thing we need to understand is that two very significant countries are conspicuous by their absence at this conference this year. One is Russia, because of the war and the world boycotting Russia, basically. And second is China, because of the COVID, the breakout that's happened and the lockdowns that have happened in China. So that puts a lot more focus on India. In the BRICS, two of the major countries are missing completely. We are the senior representative left in that grouping. And that grouping has a little bit of a divergent view with NATO and with the EU in some of the crises that are happening today.
But so is India a member of the Quad?
Yes, of course. But with respect to what's happening in Russia, the BRICS have a different view today.
Absolutely.
What's happening with China in Indo-Pacific is a different set of challenges altogether. There definitely overlaps in terms of how one affects the other. But we're viewing it in different lenses. That's why we're working with China in BRICS. But we're working with, almost like to contain China in
other groupings.
The Quad and other groupings, right?
Yes.
So, and we're working, Russia is supporting us in some areas. They're not supporting us in some. So it's not such a binary equation anymore. Friends are friends in every situation is no longer the case. Enemies are enemies in every situation is no longer the case. I think, every country is looking at things contextually and deciding on what is best for them and the future of their country.
Does
and their
this mean
citizens.
that the global trade order, which has driven capital flows, investments, and even the integration of India into the global economy over the last 3 decades and more, that economic order is crumbling and there is economic fragmentation that's happening?
Rather than say crumbling, I would say it's getting transformed.
Okay.
There will be a new. Definitely, everyone is saying there's going to be a new world order, and it's anybody's guess what that's going to look like. Is it going to be a Is it going to be a unipolar world? Is it going to be a bipolar world? Is it going to be a multipolar world? Is what we're trying to figure out right now. If I had to guess, based on what I've observed and what I've understood so far, I think we're heading to a multipolar world. It's not that people are going to have to choose sides anymore. India took a very mature approach even during the Cold War, with saying that we're going to be part of a non-aligned movement. We're not going to be part of U.S. bloc or Soviet bloc. And I think that was a very good move that we made. It may have its own set of critics, but I think we've established ourselves that independent position for ourselves to enter into this next phase now also, where we should be one of the poles in the world. Let US be a pole, let China be a pole, let Europe be a pole.
And so is India.
And so is India should be a pole.
One of the things that some of our viewers would like to hear from you, and this is how supply side shocks and what's happening globally has been impacting India as well, which is delayed deliveries, long waiting lists for cars. And that for a sector which in India is a huge success story, our automobile sector, you have a crucial role to play in that. Plus the shift from ICE engine to electric situation. How's India's automotive sector looking like to you right now? And what do you see happening in the next couple of years?
So one of the other recurring themes, you're saying, what are the recurring themes this year? One of the other recurring themes has been the global energy crisis. And it's surprising to me because, being from India, we're sometimes a little bit focus so much on our own problems, we don't realize what's happening outside in the rest of the world.
Yes.
And when we started getting this power crisis over the last several months in India, I thought it's just based on poor planning, just as usual, by states and by the center.
Yes.
But having come here, I realized that this is actually, people are saying this is the first global energy crisis that the world is facing. In the 70s, we faced an oil crisis. This is a full-blown energy crisis, encompassing all aspects. And that is really worrying because it's one thing is we have to get over it. But what happens to economies in the meantime is something we really need to think about. It's exacerbated by a number of things. If you really drill to the root cause, everything leads to climate change, right? But then war and pandemic just exacerbates it. Some people say the pandemic is also a symptom of climate change.
And while the war and the pandemic perhaps fully now on its last legs, and the war at some point will finally die out, climate change is not going to die out just with a flick of the finger.
Exactly. So there'll be more such flare-ups.
So coming back to the auto sector question and its impact on Indian consumers, how would you explain it to them?
So the EV revolution, most people tend to believe, and I also believe, that these crises is only accelerating that transition. Because of the energy crisis, the move to electric vehicle is actually getting accelerated, both because of, with all the different things that we're facing today. So, predictions about, how long it'll take for things to completely shift to EV, I think you have to start bringing them, the dates even closer back to, it may not be 2030, 2040 anymore, but in the next few years itself, we may see some major developments happening. All car companies are coming out with brand new electric vehicle models. In India, Tata, with very low fanfare, they have launched the Tata Nexon, which is doing very well.
Yeah, and it is now India's largest EV.
Yes, it's doing very well. And I think as more and more companies introduce their models, that's going to keep on accelerating that pace of change.
As a policymaker, I'm asking you this next question. Do you lose sleep over the fact that Tesla isn't coming because they only wanted import duty cuts and didn't want to do what most other manufacturers in the world have done, which is invest in local capacity building?
Right, so I don't lose any sleep over it. I mean, when Tesla finally wakes up, they'll do the same. They'll come to India and they'll establish a factory.
But will they have lost the India opportunity by then, or will their technological superiority?
I don't think so, because, they've entered China very late. China was a much more developed EV market than India.
I saw Adar Poonawalla going around in a black Tesla. I don't recall the model number, but with a side door that went up, looked very fancy.
Yes. That's I think Model X.
And therefore, when it comes to EV, who do you see ultimately winning in 5 to 10 years? I'm asking you perhaps a question that can't be answered at this stage, but
if I knew that, I'd be buying some stock.
but what stock are you buying right now?
No, I'm only buying Amara Raja stock. I'm not buying any other stock.
Okay, so let's talk about your company. And I must tell my viewers that many years back, when this company was embarking on a major expansion and a new battery manufacturing plant, and Jayadev had just come back from the States where he was studying and been asked by the family to work on setting it up. I met him as a much younger man, but he of course looks as young because he's very fit. Must be definitely amongst our fittest parliamentarians and CEOs. They talked about batteries also being sustainable from an environment point of view, and I have that abiding memory of that conversation. Where's your company at presently? To the average person who may not have purchased your stock, what would you tell him about your company?
I believe we're undervalued right now, definitely. If you look at what our peak price is and where we are right now, there's a lot of scope for improvement, and I'm sure that it will improve with time.
And why that undervaluation? Does the market not understand what you're doing? Are you not communicating enough?
I think we need to communicate a little bit more, definitely. That is one thing. But I think there's been a huge increase in input costs in the last couple of years because of pandemic and now because of this Ukraine war. All input costs have gone up. We haven't been able to recover all of those costs from our customer. We have a fairly good system of recovering when lead goes up and down. because we have various escalation clauses with our customers, and we can also create change in the replacement market. But when other input costs go up, generally we wait for them to come down again without having to go through a whole set of changes in prices and stuff like that. This time it's getting extended longer. So we need to improve our EBITDA margins. And our business is purely driven on EBITDA, multiples basically.
Right.
So the stock price fluctuates based on that. That is one thing. Second thing is people are nervous about this whole EV revolution and where we're going to be at the end of it. But what we need to, what people need to understand, whether it's a IC engine or an EV, the low voltage battery is still a lead acid battery. Right? So it doesn't, whether it's a petrol car or an electric vehicle today, they still need my battery to power the electronics and all the other gadgets in the car.
Without which the rest won't kick in.
Yes.
So as input cost pressures, like you said, are not going away anytime soon, are you going to pass on the price? Is a hike expected soon?
We have been taking some regular increases in the prices, and we'll be watching our input costs and trying to work with our customers to reach a fair understanding.
Stepping back on the point of EV battery versus the kind of batteries that I believe a majority of your portfolio is currently, do you look at that opportunity as something that India and your company can do in the long run and become like really big and massive in that?
Absolutely.
What are your plans there?
We are planning on getting into lithium-ion cell manufacturing. We participated in the recent PLI scheme. We didn't participate very aggressively because there were huge penalties attached to it, which we felt that it was too risky for us to quote too aggressively. But PLI scheme aside, that's not changing our decision. We are going ahead. We have invested in two companies, two startups, one in Europe and one in Bangalore. Both of them have developed cells and are now working on the industrialization, the commercialization of that technology.
They hold the patents for that.
Yes. And we've invested in the main companies, and we're also going to be looking at those as possible technologies that we bring to India. But we're working with both of them on the industrialization, commercialization, because that's where we can, we have 30 years of experience of manufacturing.
Absolutely.
Which they don't have. They're startup companies. So it's just a question of using different set of equipment to build a slightly different type of battery. So I think we can also play a very good positive role in helping them and they helping us.
How big is this segment expected to become in India from an industry perspective?
Well, it will dwarf the existing battery market. I mean, today, the set of competitors is very different. Once we move into lithium-ion, the set of competitors is very different. Now, that battery is competing with oil. Right, so it's going to affect everyone who's in oil and gas would be getting affected. Many of them are looking at getting into lithium-ion cell also as a hedge.
So it's going to become a pretty crowded space,
and it'll be a very large market. If you take the passenger car, 40% of the cost is a battery. So when it was lead acid battery as a starter, it's not even 1 or 2%.
Yeah.
Right now it's gone to 40%.
40%. So therefore, in the context of what's been happening to certain electric scooters and the fires around batteries, what does that represent to you as one of India's leading battery manufacturers? Poor product, poor sales and service by the company? What is it? Or the lack of regulation and norms and standards? Because it's pretty surprising, and some lives have been lost as well, tragically.
Without having access to the battery and the system that was attached to it.
Or even the DRDO report.
Or even the report, I won't be able to really comment on it. But I can say one thing is that these things generally don't happen only because of one battery. It happens because of system failure. So if the battery is if the charging is not happening properly, if the battery management system is not designed properly, if the integration with the engine and other things are not done properly, these type of things can happen. Even with fuel-based cars, you have explosions taking place. I mean, I remember there was a famous incident with one vehicle in the US where the Nova, every time it got rear-ended, it was exploding because they had the gas tank in the back.
Absolutely.
Right? So there will be issues like this in any kind of new product launches. But I think that we went into the history and when two-wheelers were really taking off in China at the initial stages, they also had such incidents happen. But they no longer have those type of incidents.
So it's also an ecosystem and its evolution, including proper charging, storage, and all of those.
Yes, the manufacturers of each component have to work with the OE to make sure that the system is designed properly. And there should be no malfunction of any of those components.
A final word, Jayadev, as we wind down this conversation. If for your own company, what kind of revenue mix do you see from the electric battery side and the traditional battery side in the near future? Is there a number that you have thought
in the near future, for the next several years, it's going to be very, very marginal business for us because we have to, until we get into a gigawatt, our plant, a gigafactory, which we're still several years away. Right now we're at the, proving out the cell, and the next project we're going to have is building a industrial scale pilot plant.
Okay.
Right now we have an R&D pilot plant to develop the cells. Next stage is going to be to construct the full scale to prove out the manufacturing process as a pilot plant. Once we prove that out, then we'll be building our gigafactory. So we're a few years away from that. So in the next few years, I don't think you're going to see much revenue coming from there, only a lot of expenditure. So, in this industry, it's almost like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
Absolutely.
Because the stakeholders are looking at it saying, you're spending all this money, nothing coming out of it. But if we don't, there's no future for us.
Absolutely. And that is the future. And the future always takes time to build. Jayadev Galla, I enjoyed this conversation very well. I hope it was worth your time as well.
Certainly.
And if you've been, thank you very much for watching.
If you like the video, do like, comment, share and subscribe.